Game of Thrones finally returned on Sunday with a great season premiere building up character relationships and setting up the rest of the season. And we here at GameSpot couldn't help but notice a number of similarities and callbacks to the very first episode of Season 1 of Game of Thrones. And digging into Reddit, we were able to find even more callbacks. So without further ado, I'm Dave Klein, and let's chat about the parallels between Season 8 and Season 1's premiere episodes. Right off the bat, we have a child running and climbing up a tree to get a better view of Jon and Daenerys entering Winterfell with their massive coalition army. This scene is incredibly similar to Season 1's moment when Robert Baratheon enters Winterfell with his army. In Season 1, it's Bran who's climbing the castle walls in order to get a better look at the incoming army in all of its splendor. Both times, these are being led by a blonde southern queen and a dark-haired northern man. Additionally, the same music is playing in both scenes, cementing this reference. Furthermore, both of the presiding heads of Winterfell tell the incoming monarch that Winterfell is theirs.
Where the hell have you been?
Guarding the north for you, Your Grace. Winterfell is yours.
Winterfell is yours, Your Grace.
In the procession of riders from the first season, we have Jaime Lannister, who, as Renatelli contrasted on Reddit, gets a lot of attention as he takes off his helmet and shakes off his golden hair. Meanwhile, in Season 8, we similarly see Jaime in a near-identical scene, this time bearded and with darkened and graying hair, and nobody was paying attention to him. Of the riders in Season 8, the only rider in both caravans, as pointed out by Grandma of Hurt, was the Hound. However, in Season 1, we see him riding in behind Joffrey wearing his dog helmet. In Season 8, he no longer bears the helmet, and as Grandma of Hurt noted, likely symbolizing him no longer being the Hound and finally just being himself, Sandor Clegane. Jockstrap69 notes that Jon asks Sansa when he first arrives,
Where are you?
just like in the same parallel scene.
Where's Arya? Sansa, where's your sister?
And speaking of intros, as it's been so long, you may have forgotten that the very first scene of Season 1, Episode 1 is north of the Wall. Here, a few members of the Night's Watch ride out to find a gruesome display of dismembered bodies, forming a pattern along with a child white, a clear message from the White Walkers of their impending arrival. Similarly, Tormund Giantsbane and Beric Dondarrion find a number of dismembered body parts, circling a single child white, formerly the Lord Ned Umber. This time it's in the shape of a spiral pattern, and unfortunately, south of the wall at Last Hearth. And for those of you wondering, this actually isn't the first time we've seen the use of a spiral pattern. In Season 3, Episode 3, Jon Snow, Ygritte, R.I.P., and the wildlings accompanying them spot a number of dismembered horses in the same creepy spiral pattern. This spiral seems to come all the way from the Children of the Forest, as we see it in ancient cave drawings at Dragonstone in Season 7, and perhaps more importantly, during the inception ceremony of the Night King in Season 6. If I had to guess, in Season 8, perhaps it represents the Night King's power, as he's now broken through his major barrier of the Wall. According to D.B. Weiss and David Benioff in an interview, they stated it was a Children of the Forest symbol that was co-opted by the Night King. Both episodes feature confessions at the crypts of Winterfell. In Season 1, this comes from Robert Baratheon admitting to Ned as to why he came to Winterfell, that he wants Ned to become his Hand of the King. Meanwhile, in Season 8, we see Sam finding Jon Snow in the crypts of Winterfell, with him confessing that he's discovered Jon's true heritage and that Jon is the true king of the Seven Kingdoms. Hopefully the similarities stop there and he won't suffer a similar headless fate to Ned. As Friggin' Diggin points out, in Season 1's first episode, Jon is going through a bit of an identity crisis over being a bastard, and hence why he wants to join the Wall and why he gets offended when Tyrion calls him this. Now in the first episode of Season 8, Jon is going through a new identity crisis over finding out who he truly is. While it's from Episode 2 of Season 1, this is still a fun one to mention. It's Green Arrow on Reddit noticed that the last time Ned Stark ever saw Jon, he told Jon they'd talk about his mother.
The next time we see each other, we'll talk about your mother. I promise.
And in the first episode of Season 8, the place where Sam reveals who Jon Snow's mother really is right in front of Ned Stark's statue in the crypt. Similarly, while it was episode 2 of season 1 in which we saw Jon gift Arya with Needle and them share a loving embrace before departing, it was nice to see the parallel in season 8 with Jon and Arya finally reuniting again, and the first subject being that Arya still has Needle.
Have you ever used it?
Once or twice.
Infinity noticed that both episodes have their obligatory Game of Thrones brothel scenes, with season 1 showcasing Tyrion, season 8 showcasing Bronn, and this YouTube video showcasing pretty much none of it because we don't want to get demonetized. And speaking of other things I can't show, Infinity noticed both episodes featured incest scenes between members of the royal families, and in both cases, they were being watched, possibly, as Black Twin suggests, by Bran in both cases, who could potentially have been watching through Daenerys' dragon. Gross, Bran! On a cute romantic note, Sarah J. 2010 noticed that in season 1, Robert Baratheon tells Ned,
"If your sister had lived, we'd have been bound by blood. Well, it's not too late. I have a son, you have a daughter. We'll join our houses."
And in the first episode of season 8, we see Gendry and Arya flirting with each other. So if this comes to fruition, House Baratheon will survive and still be nobility, even if it wasn't quite what Robert Baratheon had in mind. Continuing the romance, Duke of the Vines also noticed that in episode 1, Cersei and Catelyn Stark have a conversation about their kids getting married while at the banquet and watching their children in the distance. Meanwhile, in season 8, Varys, Tyrion, and Davos talk about Dany and Jon getting married while watching from a distance. It just goes to show, while the times change and people grow older, as the three lament, some things never change, with many things being cyclical as we see throughout this episode. In this vein, a direct parallel we see is in Sansa, and how she's grown and become near identical to Catelyn Stark from episode 1. As Say and 8's so noticed, Catelyn Stark is extremely wary of the Visiting Monarch, and specifically Cersei, with Sansa reacting similarly to the new Visiting Monarch and Daenerys. As It's a Throwaway 416 noted, when Sansa first meets Cersei in episode 1, Cersei compliments her, telling her she's a beauty. She also tells Cat, as a clear nicety, that the North is a beautiful land. Sansa had learned the hollowness of this and applies it directly to Dany when she tells Sansa nearly the exact same things on their first meeting.
The North is as beautiful as your brother claimed. As are you.
Wrapping up the episode from Duke of the Vines on Reddit, he noticed that both episodes end with a confrontation between Jaime and Bran. Jaime this time things are reversed, with season 1 ending in Jaime looking confident as he pushes Bran out of a window, and season 8 in Bran looking confidently at a disheveled Jaime. Of course, with all of these similarities, there is one major difference that permeates throughout the entirety of the episode. In season 1, we saw a beautiful Winterfell with grass-filled shots and mountainous vistas. Now, winter is truly here. There you have a number of parallels between the first episode of Game of Thrones premiere and its final season. I think it was the perfect way to start the final season of Game of Thrones, where we got to see both the similarities and differences as time has progressed, with an episode that almost mirrors the very first of the show. For more things on Game of Thrones, we've got you covered as we fully delve into GameSpot of Thrones.